Hello, I'm Citrus, and you're looking at the Master Grade Gundam AGE-1 Normal from Gundam AGE. I kind of lost the unboxing footage this time, so we're just going to go straight into the build. This kit was released in February 2012 for 3,500 yen. At the time it was announced, this kit was billed as the new Master Grade concept, featuring a ton of new techniques and basically what Bandai expected future Master Grades to be like. The kit was supposed to be modular, very easy to take apart and put together, featuring lots of wraparound molding so that there were no exposed seam lines to worry about. Unfortunately, when the kit hit store shelves, fans were almost instantly disappointed. A lot of builders felt this kit was a really dumbed down Master Grade, and being at the 3,500 price point kind of put it into really dangerous territory because it was really apparent at the time that compared to other similarly priced kits like the 2.0 Zaku's and GMs and stuff like that, this kit just couldn't compare. The Master Grade AGE-1 is detailed on the outside, but on the inside it was way simpler and it was just not as interesting to build. Interestingly, the actual reception of the kit overall was fairly lukewarm. Bandai did sell a decent number of these to justify a couple of reprints, but the kit ultimately failed to gain mass appeal, and it really wasn't enough to save the other AGE Master Grade kits like the AGE-3 and FX, which were ultimately cancelled because the show was just doing so badly. It's a huge shame because the unpainted prototypes for the AGE-3 and FX Master Grades were actually toured a bit in hobby shows at the time, so Bandai had actually already put considerable R&D work into those kits just for them to never see the light of day. So as for my experience with the kit, as you're hopefully seeing through the build right now, it is incredibly underwhelmingly simple. You almost don't need the instructions to put it together. I read through it once while I was unboxing it and I basically never needed it again. The fact that it's also really thin kind of doesn't bode well because it tells you that there aren't many steps involved in putting this kit together. So complexity is something that brings you into Master Grades as a whole, but this one probably won't be very satisfying. All of the parts are highly symmetric, and basically if you've built literally any other Master Grade before, you're probably not going to be stumped by anything that this kit can throw at you. On the bright side, because of how the leg separates at the knees and how the arms separate at the elbows, this kit is very easy to paint. So you can paint the knee its own color and then paint all of the rest while after it's already assembled and then stick it back all together really easily. Unfortunately, the frame itself really isn't worth displaying because underneath the armor there's basically no mechanical detail whatsoever. The outside does look really good though, especially with all of the little vents everywhere. It's not really canon, of course, because in the animation model was very simple, so none of these details showed up at all. But it is something that you can appreciate once you put this all together and put it on your shelf. In a lot of ways, the complexity compares well to modern Reborn 100 kits, and it is similarly priced. So if you think of this kit as one of those and not as a Master Grade, the value proposition is actually okay. In terms of how meaty the overall experience is, the AGE-1 is definitely not as dense as some previous MGs before it that were much better, but it's also not as bad as some of the recent Master Grades that we received, which are, in my opinion, incredibly underwhelming. Specifically looking at the Master Grade Jagen and the Gunner Zaku, which honestly, when you boil it down, is basically just like a big high grade because the frames have so little complexity about them. The funny thing is, even though fans really didn't like this kit, there are a lot of features about the build that are reminiscent of really high-end, like well-regarded kits like the new Gundam Verka. For example, this was the first kit to feature foil stickers behind the clear parts to give them reflective backing. It has these big knee stickers, which of course the new also had all over to add in bits of like blue and gray detail to give it sort of a real grade look. And the AGE-1 had all of these characteristics 10 months before the Master Grade new Verka came out in December 2012. Even today, like the manipulators that you see on this kit are used on almost every version of the GM that have come out after it, where you have these sort of like mechanically looking square hands with interchangeable fingers and an articulated thumb. The only difference between the hands included in this kit and the hands included in something like, say, the GM Sniper 2 is that the UC style kits have a different wrist joint, but the entire runner is exactly the same as the one that comes out of this. I think the only weird part of the entire build is the chest area, where the small pieces for the cockpit are very fiddly to get in place and to hold in position until you put everything together. So although Bandai obviously tried to make the rest of the kit as simple as possible, I'm not really sure why they made this particular section of the kit so fiddly and complicated. And it's not fiddly or complicated in a nice way, like they're moving pistons or anything like that. Like the little hatch that opens in front of the pilot seat is just kind of annoying because it doesn't really do anything. It's just part separation almost for the sake of it. And that's all I have to say about the build. It's really nothing too special, so please enjoy the rest of the sequence in silence. So here's the finished AGE-1, and I have to say my first impression is that it feels a lot more dense in my hand than I expected it to. Obviously it's not hollow, as you saw during the build. There are plastic parts literally everywhere inside of it. It's just not very detailed. And the overall construction feels pretty solid. The polycaps do feel a little bit squishy. With a lot of modern kits, we are of course really used to the KPS construction, no real polycaps to worry about, so they feel much tighter and more secure. And I definitely get the feeling that over time, some of these joints will probably not hold up very well, especially the ankles, which are just two big ball joints. Really good range, but I worry about how well they'll be able to hold up poses in the long run. I suppose one positive is that because the design of the kit is very simple and there aren't any like big accessories or big backpacks or anything like that hanging off of it, you don't really have to worry about weight issues too much. You can see here on the chest that the reflective backing seal looks really good behind the sort of AGE device thing. Also see a little bit on the head. Looking at just the exterior details, I can really almost forgive it for lacking a particularly compelling build, and especially given its low price point of 3,500 yen, I guess it's really not that bad if you find the design of it interesting at all. I highly recommend picking out the little tick marks all over the body and a color other than gray as shown in the manual, because I think it makes all the details pop much more. You don't have to go with red as I have. I think maybe yellow or blue to match one of the other primary colors on the kit will look especially nice as well. But yeah, just take advantage of it and don't just put gray ink in there, because I think it makes it blend in with the panel lines just a little bit too much. There are a couple of small issues. One thing is that the finger bits, especially the fist ones, are very loose. They just sort of wiggled in there and it's very easy to bump them out of place and drop them. So normally I would prefer to have the one of the gripping hands in there. The accessory seems to help the finger bits stay in place because the thumb will also be applying a little bit of pressure to hold it in. And the other thing is that the peg between the elbow and the upper arm is very short. So if you're not very gentle when you bend the arm, the lower half of the arm can just pop right out of its socket. And because it's a polycat connection, it will wear out over time if you pop it out a lot. In terms of proportions, I actually prefer the high grade, which has a slightly narrower chest. The master grade's chest is just a little bit too wide and looks a little bit boxy for its hips, and it makes the waist look unnaturally thin. I think this was kind of a compromise that Bandai did to make the AGE-1 Titus with its big shoulders look better, but I don't know. The AGE-1 proportions just seem a little bit more balanced to me. And just taking a look around the back, you can see what little mechanical detail there is. Just adding a little bit of metallic colors here and there will really help it pop. The stripe sticker here on top is a little bit too long, and you can see that there's a bit of excess peeling up right there. So after this review, I'm going to trim it down so that it is flush with the back edge of the spoiler. For accessories, you have a sort of nondescript looking beam rifle. It looks really just like any kind of like sci-fi gun from like a low budget first person shooter or something like that. But you know, that's just what the Dawes rifle is, and it's just what it looks like. And the little rivet details that the mold adds does give it just a little bit of intrigue. So it's not just a big gray block. I added just a little bit of silver paint to the sides of all of the green parts just to make them pop a little bit inside of the housing, because you can see otherwise they would be pretty dark in there. And next is the shield, which has quite a bit more sculpted detail in it, which looks pretty nice. I couldn't really figure out a good color to put into the big divots in here, so I just left them uncolored, just put some blue panel lining in there. I think their little red markings match pretty well, and this is just gray along the big sort of channels in there, which I think looks pretty nice. And you get 4 beams in 2 lengths. So you have a beam dagger and sort of a beam saber effect. These I think are borrowed from the Master Grade Exia, so that's pretty interesting. Don't see these too often. And next we have a couple of small accessories I don't normally talk about. So we have this little figure of the pilot Flit Asino. And a cool gimmick is that if you open up the cockpit hatch like this, you can see there's a little indent right there, and the base of the figure can actually stand in it. It's not a super secure fit, but it will sort of stay in there like that. So you can have it look like as if he's coming out or is about to go into the Gundam, which looks pretty cool. And the other small piece is this hexagon, which is for changing this to display as like the AGE-1 flat. And in the back of the cockpit hatch, you can see there's a little bit of silver backing sticker peeking out. So that is the back of this green piece. And if you can take something thin and stick it in there, you can, with some pretty considerable effort, remove the green chest piece and then insert this one to display the Gundam as the AGE-1 flat, which is the AGE-1 without the AGE device equipped. And you can pull it down, pull it out, you can see that it's the little cockpit in there. And these are the fiddly parts that I'm talking about, which really don't do all that much. And that's the Master Grade Gundam AGE-1 Normal. It pioneered lots of bad modern Master Grade design tropes, like the finger bits, the near zero complexity, the ugly inner frame, and the complete lack of pistons and other moving mechanical detail. I'd sum it up as a low satisfaction big toy. It's really good for beginners, it's easy to build, and it looks fantastic. I guess the kind of funny thing is, despite the initial backlash, this kit really did predict the future, just like Bandai said it would. The price point and the complexity makes it pretty comparable to a Reborn 100 kit, and honestly I think it could have used just a bit more R&D to make it into a real Master Grade. It's not a bad way to spend 3,500 yen, but good luck finding one at this price right now, because it's been a while since the last reprint and there aren't that many out there. You'll probably see a lot of eBay or Amazon listings with absurd prices that you should definitely not pay for one of these. So because of its relative unavailability and its really lack of interesting features, I really can't recommend getting this over the high grade, which is obviously much easier to get and looks, well, basically as good as this minus the exterior details, and is about, sadly, as complex on the inside. It's not a bad kit overall, it's just not really interesting, and unless you really like Gundam AGE and you're a huge fan of the mechanical design, it's just not really worth picking up. That's all for this review. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, yeah. It's not too bad back here. Yeah. Oh my God. Too bad you're hairy here.